Rachel adjusted the display of handcrafted vases at her high-end furniture boutique in downtown Austin when her phone buzzed. A glance at the screen froze her fingers mid-air. A message from Eric. "I'm leaving you, moved to LA with my 25-year-old girlfriend. I emptied our joint account. Don't bother calling." The words stared back at her, each one sharper than the last. Her heart should have pounded, her hands should have shaken, but Rachel only sighed, pressing her lips together as she slid the phone back into her pocket. "Does this coffee table come in walnut?" a customer asked, running her hand along the sleek oak surface. Rachel exhaled smoothly, offering her a practiced smile. "Yes, we have a walnut finish. Let me grab a sample for you." No tears, no outburst, no scene. Eric must have imagined her crumbling, devastated, and begging. Instead, she finalized a $2,000 sale, wrapped it up with her usual impeccable service, and carried on with her day. Because Rachel had seen this coming. For months, the clues had been there. Late nights that didn't match his paycheck, a sudden obsession with the gym, the way he guarded his phone like it held state secrets. 3 months ago, a dinner receipt for 2 at a 5-star restaurant had sealed it. That night, Rachel had quietly opened a separate bank account. 1 week later, when Eric suggested merging their finances to simplify things, she had smiled and agreed, while moving her personal savings out of reach. Now, as she locked up her boutique for the night, she pulled out her phone. She didn't reply to Eric. Instead, she called her lawyer. "It's time," she said, her voice steady. She was ready. Rachel had always trusted her instincts, and for months they had been screaming at her that something was wrong. It started subtly. Eric started working late more often, keeping his phone face down, and suddenly caring too much about his appearance. He started hitting the gym religiously, buying expensive cologne and upgrading his wardrobe. At first, Rachel convinced herself he was just going through a phase. Then came the credit card charges. One evening, while paying bills, she noticed a transaction from a luxury steakhouse. The date? A night Eric had sworn he was stuck at the office. It wasn't just a meal, it was a $300 dinner for 2. That was the moment something clicked. Instead of confronting him, Rachel got smart. She opened a separate bank account at a different institution and began quietly shifting her personal savings. A week later, when Eric casually suggested merging their finances to simplify things, she smiled and agreed, while ensuring he only had access to just enough to avoid suspicion. She also started keeping track of everything, every questionable charge, every flimsy excuse, every late night that didn't add up. By the time Eric sent his cruel text, Rachel already knew. She had watched him unravel in slow motion, making mistake after mistake, never suspecting she was one step ahead. So while he thought he was making a clean break, Rachel had already secured everything that mattered. She wasn't caught off guard, she was prepared. And Eric was about to learn just how much. Rachel didn't respond to Eric's text. She didn't waste a second asking why or how. She already knew. Instead, she took a sip of her coffee, unlocked her office computer, and forwarded a pre-drafted email to her lawyer. The subject line was simple: "It's time." Within minutes, the legal wheels were in motion, the divorce papers were ready to be filed. Eric thought he had made a clean escape, but he had no idea she had already set the pieces in place. Next, Rachel called the bank. "Hi, this is Rachel Carter. I need to report fraudulent charges on a joint account and remove an authorized user." She calmly provided documentation of Eric's own admission, the text where he bragged about draining the account. Within 20 minutes, access to the remaining funds was locked and a fraud investigation was opened. Then she moved to the credit cards. "Yes, I need to dispute unauthorized transactions, first-class airline tickets to LA, and a luxury hotel booking." The representative confirmed that the charges could be canceled due to clear evidence of fraud. Rachel could almost picture the scene. Eric and his girlfriend waltzing into the airport, only to find their tickets invalid. She smiled, sipping her coffee again. Let him think he won. By the time he realized what was happening, she would be 10 steps ahead. The next morning, Rachel silenced her phone as she sipped her coffee and reviewed new inventory orders. It had been buzzing non-stop for the past hour. Eric. The first few messages were smug. I know this must be hard for you. You're almost 40 after all. At least you have your little store to keep you busy. Rachel smirked. The little store, he had always dismissed, generated more income than his middle management salary ever had. Then, the tone of his messages changed. What the hell did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. Rachel took another slow sip of coffee, savoring the image. Eric and his 25-year-old girlfriend stranded at the airport, no flights, no hotel, no easy escape. He must have maxed out his personal credit cards months ago. That had been obvious when he started suggesting they consolidate finances. Rachel didn't respond. Instead, she got ready for work and headed to her boutique. By noon, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Eric. It was his mother. Rachel, dear, Eric told us everything. How controlling you were, how cold. And now you're being vindictive, causing problems with his travel plans. Rachel put the call on speaker while arranging a display of designer vases. Did he also mention he emptied our joint account and booked a trip with his girlfriend on our credit card? Silence. Then a hesitant, well, he said you left him no choice. Rachel exhaled sharply. Barbara, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? More silence. Then, finally, he did sound a little cruel. Rachel smiled. Eric's world was starting to crumble. Monday morning arrived with the weight of finality. The emergency divorce hearing was set, and Rachel was ready. Eric, on the other hand, looked anything but prepared. He sat stiffly in his ill-fitting designer blazer, one that once screamed confidence but now looked desperate. Beside him, his lawyer flipped through papers, clearly playing catch-up. Rachel, in contrast, sat poised, dressed in a sleek navy suit, her lawyer calmly organizing the evidence. The judge wasted no time. Mr. Carter, he began, glancing over the submitted documents, you openly admitted to draining your joint account, using shared credit cards for unauthorized personal expenses, and attempting to claim ownership of assets that are legally separate. Do you deny this? Eric shifted in his seat. I was just trying to make a clean break. By committing financial fraud? The judge raised an eyebrow. Rachel watched as Eric's bravado crumbled. He had thought this would be easy. He had expected her to panic, not prepare. Her lawyer laid out every piece of evidence. Bank records proving her business was separate property. Texts from Eric bragging about the money he took. Statements showing his reckless spending over the past year. The judge didn't hesitate. All shared assets are frozen pending final distribution. Mr. Carter, you are ordered to repay the removed funds within 30 days. Eric's face paled. That money's gone. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it, the judge replied coldly. Rachel didn't flinch. She had won. In the weeks following the court ruling, Rachel's life moved forward, swiftly and successfully. Her boutique thrived, sales skyrocketed, and she finalized plans to open a second location. The irony wasn't lost on her while Eric struggled to rebuild his life. The little store he had once belittled was now more successful than ever. Meanwhile, news of Eric's downfall trickled back through mutual acquaintances. His personal credit cards had been maxed out for months, and with the court freezing shared assets, he was completely broke. His plan to move to LA had turned into a nightmare. Stuck in a budget motel near the airport, relying on his girlfriend Madison to cover expenses. But Madison wasn't happy. She had expected glamorous dates, not cheap takeout in a cramped motel room. When Eric suggested she take out a loan to help them get back on their feet, she finally saw him for who he was. Within weeks, she ended things and went back to her old life, leaving Eric alone and penniless. By the time Rachel heard about it, she barely reacted. She was too busy hiring new staff and overseeing construction on her second boutique. Eric, however, wasn't done yet. Late one evening, Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you've won, but you wouldn't be where you are without me. Half of that business is mine. Arisha smiled, forwarded the message to her lawyer, and turned off her phone. Let him keep digging his own grave. Rachel barely thought about Eric anymore. Her second boutique was set to open in a few months, and business was booming. But Eric, his downward spiral wasn't over yet. One by one, the people who had initially defended him started to distance themselves. His mother, Barbara, called Rachel again, this time not to defend him, but to apologize. We believed him at first, she admitted, voice heavy with regret. He said you were cold, controlling, that he needed to escape. But then we saw his texts, the way he bragged about taking your money. That's not the son I thought I raised. Rachel kept her voice even. I appreciate the call, Barbara, but this isn't my problem anymore. Even Eric's sister Lauren reached out through mutual friends. He's living in some tiny rental now, she said. Still blaming you, still saying he got screwed over, but honestly, no one believes him anymore. Eric had burned every bridge. His friends, tired of hearing his excuses, had moved on. His former co-workers whispered about how his fresh start had turned into a financial disaster. Even Madison had apparently warned others about him, sharing screenshots of his desperate attempts to win her back. Rachel barely reacted. She had wasted enough energy on Eric. Now she had a business empire to run. And while he was stuck in the past, she was building something real. 2 years after Eric's cruel text, Rachel stood in her third boutique, watching customers browse through her newest collection. Her business had flourished beyond what she had ever imagined. What once started as a single store now spanned 3 locations with a growing online presence. She no longer thought about Eric. Until one day, an email arrived from her lawyer. Eric filed another petition to revisit the divorce settlement. The judge dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay court costs. Thought you'd enjoy that. Rachel smiled, shaking her head. He was still trying, still clinging to the belief that he had been wronged. But while he was stuck in his bitterness, she had built something lasting. Through mutual friends, she heard he had finally moved out of his dingy rental and into an even smaller place, above a garage, working a lower-paid job after his former company downsized. His dating profile still described him as young at heart, though his picture was clearly outdated. Meanwhile, Rachel had been invited to speak at a women's business conference. During the Q&A, a young woman hesitated before asking, "My husband says I'm being paranoid for keeping my business finances separate. He says marriage means sharing everything. What do you think?" Rachel didn't hesitate. "My ex-husband said the same thing, right up until he tried to claim half my business in our divorce." Laughter rippled through the audience. Rachel smiled, looking around at the women she was inspiring. Eric's betrayal had been nothing more than a footnote in her success story. Above her desk hung a framed sign. Success is the best revenge. Lessons learned from the story. Rachel's journey is more than just a tale of betrayal and revenge. It's a powerful lesson in resilience, financial independence, and strategic thinking. Here are the key takeaways. 1. Financial independence is power. Rachel's ability to protect herself financially was the ultimate game changer. By keeping her business assets separate and quietly securing her personal finances, she ensured that Eric's betrayal wouldn't leave her vulnerable. Lesson: always maintain financial independence, even in marriage. Shared finances are fine, but always have separate accounts and legal protection for personal assets. 2. Emotional control is key. Instead of reacting impulsively to Eric's cruel texts, Rachel stayed composed, executed her plan, and let logic, not emotions, guide her actions. Lesson: when faced with betrayal, staying calm and strategic is far more powerful than emotional retaliation. 3. Pay attention to red flags. Rachel noticed the warning signs long before Eric's official departure. Late nights, sudden secrecy, financial inconsistencies. All were clues that something was wrong. Instead of ignoring them, she took action. Lesson: Trust your instincts. If something feels off, don't dismiss it. Prepare for possible outcomes. 4. Success is the best revenge. Rachel didn't waste time plotting revenge in a conventional way. She simply focused on thriving. While Eric spiraled, she expanded her business, built a strong reputation, and became an inspiration for others. Lesson: the best way to overcome betrayal is to focus on your own growth and success, not on getting even. 5. People reveal their true colors over time. Eric assumed Rachel would be helpless without him, but he underestimated her intelligence and preparation. Meanwhile, his own reckless behavior ultimately led to his downfall. Lesson: those who betray others often dig their own graves. The best response? Step back and let them self-destruct. 6. Surround yourself with the right people. While Eric's friends and family initially defended him, they eventually saw the truth. Rachel, on the other hand, focused on surrounding herself with strong, supportive people who helped her grow. Lesson: your environment matters. Distance yourself from toxic people and invest in relationships that uplift and support you. 7. Always be prepared. Rachel didn't just react to Eric's betrayal. She had been preparing for months. Her careful documentation, financial planning, and legal foresight ensured that she came out on top. Lesson: preparation beats panic. Always have contingency plans for unexpected situations in life and business. Final thought: this story isn't just about overcoming heartbreak, it's about taking control of your own destiny. Rachel's story proves that self-respect, financial independence, and strategic planning are the ultimate shields against betrayal. And in the end, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy, it's making sure they have no power over your life at all.